This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name, of course, Eben Jansen. The show is live and broadcast from our studios here in Auckland Park. We're also streaming live on YouTube right now with the entire show available on demand all day on our YouTube channel. Before we start, the BCCSA has reprimanded the SABC as a consequence of the failure on my part to grant Mr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi a reasonable opportunity to respond to questions or properly conclude an interview on behalf of the economic freedom fighters following the removal of the Rhodes statue at the University of Cape Town last month. I feel it is my duty to also apologise to the SABC for my transgression and to thank the organisation for its support during this difficult personal time. Then I extend a further apology to you, the viewers, or anyone else whom my actions at the time may have offended. Now for today. We start with a look at pregnancy in primary schools and government's decision to hand out condoms in primary schools around the country. What are your views on this topic? You can send it to us at SABC Newsroom. Also, we'll take a look at the crisis in Burundi and its wider implications. There's an update on the series of diphtheria deaths that was reported in Durban recently. And we close the show today with a look at International Museum Day a little bit later. But first, let's get the day's news from Anine Domal.
Good morning, I'm Anine Domal. Let's have a look at the stories making headlines today. Former Grand Slam tennis champion Bob Hewitt's attorney has indicated that he will be asking for a postponement of his client's sentencing. Hewitt has been found guilty on 2 counts of rape and sexual assault. The 75-year-old is expected to appear in the North Gauteng High Court today to be sentenced for the crimes committed more than 30 years ago. The Alexandra Magistrates Court is expected to make a ruling on the bail application of 2 men implicated in the death of Emmanuel Sithole. The Mozambican national's death occurred during a wave of xenophobic attacks in April. He died as a result of a single stab wound during an attempted robbery. Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta is set to address the opening of the 6th session of the Pan-African Parliament in Midrand today. After meeting in Pretoria last night, President Jacob Zuma and Kenyatta agreed to increase contact between their countries. Former President Thabo Mbeki will also be present at the session to deliver his report on illicit flows from Africa. Meanwhile, the crisis in Burundi is expected to feature prominently at both the Pan-African Parliament and the Great Lakes Conference in Luanda. Burundian President Pierre Nkurunziza made his first public appearance yesterday following last week's failed coup. It followed weeks of demonstrations against his decision to take a 3rd term in office. He refused to answer questions about the matter. Nkurunziza also claimed that the Somali-based Al-Shabaab group posed a threat to his country. Nigeria's military has destroyed 10 Boko Haram camps in the country's remote northeast. This as it pressed on with the offensive against the militant Islamist fighters yesterday. Thousands have been killed and several million displaced in a 6-year Boko Haram insurgency in Nigeria. And Kaizer Chiefs captain Tefu Mashamaite took up top honours at the year-ending Premier Soccer League Awards last night. Mashamaite was the big winner, capturing the Footballer of the Year and Player of the Year. 17 awards and a special Chairman's honour were handed out at the Sandton Convention Centre. Premiership champions Kaizer Chiefs won in 5 categories, including Coach of the Year for Stuart Baxter and the MTN 8 Last Man Standing accolade for George Maluleka. Well, remember, you can find all of those stories on our Newsroom Facebook page. Just search for Newsroom. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, back to you.
Thank you very much, Anine. Now, in a bid to tackle increasing teenage pregnancy, HIV and TB infections in schools, government called for public comments on its proposal to roll out condoms in primary schools. Over the years, the distribution of condoms in schools has been a contentious one. Last year, there were 2,581 schoolgirls pregnant in the Western Cape alone. And of those, 78 were in primary school, and 5 of those girls were in grade 5. More recently, 1 in about 20 girls at the Mashishing Secondary School near Lydenburg are reportedly pregnant this year. Now, this morning we are joined by Dr. Faith Khumalo, the Chief Director for Care and Support in Schools here in South Africa, and also in our Cape Town studio, we are joined by Mr. Clive Aris, who is a principal at the West End Primary School in the Western Cape. A very good morning to you, Mr. Aris. Very good morning to you, Dr. Khumalo. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
If I can start with you, Doctor, just tell us, how do you view this, what some see as a contentious issue? How do you view this at the moment in our primary schools in South Africa?
Yeah, I mean, thank you very much for having us, and good morning to all the viewers. The issue of young people's sexuality is a very emotional one, and young people's sexuality will always be contested. I think our stand is that it is important for us to make sure that we provide them the knowledge, the skills and ability to be able to confront their sexuality in a responsible manner when they do engage in sex. And so this proposal that we are talking about today is really not only about condoms. I think I can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
We are looking at a whole package of sexual and reproductive health education and services that we believe is important for adolescents and young people to have. And education has to be at the forefront of that, for them to understand their bodies, what sex is, and more importantly, to delay sexual debut, because that's what we want to do. And the condoms become part of the services that are provided to them, and I hope I'll have the opportunity to tell you what that package of services entails.
We will get there shortly. I want to go to Mr. Aris, who's a principal in Cape Town. Good morning to you once again, Mr. Aris. Just tell us your experience on the ground. The numbers in the Western Cape doesn't look good, does it?
Not to my knowledge. I do not have the particular information for you. But I believe that if we come back to the topic with regards to handing out of condoms at primary schools, the Principals Association and parents will not be in good stand for it, because if we hand out condoms to primary school learners, we will be encouraging youngsters at primary school to engage in unlawful activity, because it's against the law for learners under the age of 16 years to have any sexual relations.
How do you view that sentiment, Dr. Khumalo? It is certainly within the legal framework, it is right, but the way that young people live now, is it as simplistic as that? And tell us, how do you support the other plans that support this idea?
Yeah. I mean, as a department, we want to say that it is not our intention to give condoms to 10-year-old children, like the headlines have been saying. The package of sexual and reproductive health education and services is tailored so that it is age appropriate. So the issue of counseling on contraception, on condom availability and distribution is really targeted at the high school, at the secondary school, age group. And the evidence is out there in terms of, unplanned teenage pregnancy levels, as also the high rate of HIV infection, particularly amongst girls in ages over 18. And I think it is really the responsibility of the education department, as well as everybody else, to make sure that the services are provided to children. The mechanisms of how the condoms shall be distributed have not been finalized. Yeah. And we work very, very closely with the Department of Health, who have school health nurses that come into schools. And we believe that that is one avenue, through a one-on-one consultation with a health professional, that you get counseling and education on contraception, including condom use and availability, and also contraception. I can't also stress that enough. We also talk to young people around male medical circumcision because we're really wanting to address HIV as well, as well as, you know, HIV counseling and testing for those that are old enough and where there's parental consent for that to happen within a school environment. So it's a whole range of things that have to work together. But parents, school officials, the principals are really key. I want to say that we've been through a 2-year consultation process where we've been talking to each of their stakeholders around this matter, and their view have been factored into the draft policy that we have on the table.
Mr. Aris, what do you say to that? And I also want to talk a little bit wider about the role in parents. We always talk about the role of parents when we deal with the study part of schools within children, but surely this is not a responsibility that parents can be handing over to schools completely. And how do you then get the parents involved and on side in this very emotive but very necessary action?
I think we need to point out first and foremost is that the South African Schools Act is currently conflicting with itself, where it indicates that it's illegal for children under the age of 16 years to engage in sexual activity. However, in that same act, it pointed out and gives autonomy to grade or 12-year-old learners to have abortions without the consent of parents. Sexual health education in primary school should be linked to primary health care issues. It must be an educational matter where we instill skills, values, attitudes within learners, which is of a preventative nature, which also groom and develop acceptable behavior and conduct with regards to sexual, any sexual education.
Mr. Aris,
it's furthermost, I believe that.
Mr. Aris,
yes.
before I'll get back to you conclude, I just want I want to get on with that point you're talking about, because I think it's very important to make to make the distinction between the two. Yes, there are children having sex with other children at schools. That's the one element, and that's illegal, I understand. But there are also within the teenage or the young people pregnancy paradigm, there are children who are forced into sexual scenarios outside of school and so forth. They are within our group, within the family, wherever. There are children that are at risk. How do we come to terms? How do we deal with that as a society, yourself and the schools and the parents?
Are you asking me that question? Yes, no, absolutely, you are very correct. And I think that's why it's important that we don't castigate every single teenager who's pregnant, because we don't know the circumstances. What we don't know is that, you know, of the very high levels of teenage pregnancy we have, what proportion of that is peer and how much of that is adults who actually have perpetrated an illegal act by imposing themselves on the child. And I think that's where the criminal justice system has come in, and that we as schools and as parents must make sure that we report those cases and the law must take its course. But it becomes a community responsibility like you're pointing out. And primarily it must start at home. So we want our parents to also take their rightful place in educating their own children around sexuality, because that also gives you the opportunity as a parent to communicate your own values, your own ethos onto the child, and not leave it up really to the school and the teacher to deal with these matters. It is too complex, it is too important to do that.
How do you view the children at risk scenario that we're talking about? And not everyone can be treated exactly the same, Mr. Aris.
Absolutely correct. It's unfortunate that these issues are affecting the most vulnerable in society. The schools who are serving the poorest of the poorest communities, they are normally affected more than the affluent schools. I believe that the government must support these communities come up with tangible strategies. For example, additional lay councils can be deployed at schools that can assist with preventative education, assist the teachers in life skills programs. So in order for the learners to educate and educate themselves with regards to sexual education.
Thank you very much for joining us today. That is Mr. Clive Aris, who is the principal of the Western Primary School in Western Cape. Of course, the numbers of teenage pregnancy in the Western Cape is very high. And then also Dr. Faith Kumalo, the Chief Director for Care and Support in Schools. I thank the both of you for joining us today. It's an issue that confronts all of us. All of us need to take responsibility for that as parents of children. Our children are at risk every single day. It starts in the family home. It's not something that we can hand over simply to government and then respond negatively when government puts issues and put measures in place to deal with the scourge and the high levels of teenage pregnancy within our schools. At SABC Newsroom is where you can send us your contribution on that. Let's just take a look at what we have at the moment. Well, 9 motorcycle gang members were killed yesterday when a gunfight broke out between rival gangs at a restaurant in Waco, Texas. 18 further people were transferred to local hospitals with gunshot and stab wounds. But this is what you are saying about the issue. Madison Albee says, my heart is hurting for Waco tonight. Love my town, love my school, and my thoughts and prayers are with everyone involved. Killer Bunny says, 9 thugs shot by police, 0 riots, business looters fire set designated spaces to destroy. Faith's mummy says, Waco isn't even trending. Where is the outrage? And there you have a picture coming up there. As you can see, some members of these biker gangs and also police have, well, cordoned off the area. Even after a mass shooting, white bikers still good old boys, according to the cops. That one from Jeff. These are some of the views coming in after a shocking occurrence. 9 people dead now. The number is expected to rise with 18 more people in hospital with a variety of gunshot and stab wounds. Now, today's picture comes from the Houston Chronicle. It says there multiple casualties reported following a shootout at a Twin Peaks restaurant in Waco. That is a picture of the day incoming there. Let's now take a look at the front pages from around the globe today. We start in Europe with the Times. The battle lines over Labour's future were drawn last night after the head of Britain's biggest union turned his fire on Blairites and demanded a new leader willing to champion organised Labour. Then across the pond in the United States, the USA Today reports that 9 motorcycle gang members were killed yesterday when a gunfight broke out between rival gangs at a restaurant in Waco. According to reports, 18 more people were transferred to local hospitals with gunshot and stab wounds. And finally, in China, the South China Morning Post reports that China and the United States should take appropriate steps in dealing with disputes so as to avoid damage to their increasingly important relationship. President Xi Jinping said on Sunday at a time of sharp differences between the two countries over escalating tensions in the South China Sea. Let's take a look now at what's happening around our country here in South Africa. We start in the Northern Cape in Kimberley, where the case against the ANC's John Block and Alvin Boertes enters its final stage. The accused will hear by Friday this week if they are found guilty of fraud and corruption. Then in the Western Cape, Cape Town, the defence for a man accused of killing Dr. Louis Haynes is expected to call its first witness in the Western Cape High Court shortly. Martinez van der Walt has pleaded not guilty to hijacking, kidnapping and murdering the paediatrician in 2013. Then in Cyprus, George Luca will be laid to rest in his home country today, a week after he died at the Steve Biko Academic Hospital here in Pretoria. Luca had been denied medical parole despite suffering from stage 4 lung cancer. Well, we're not going to go to a break just yet. We're going to move on to the crisis in Burundi, and it's expected to feature prominently at both the Pan-African Parliament and the Great Lakes Conference in Luanda. Burundian President Pierre Nkurunziza made his first public appearance yesterday following last week's failed coup. It was followed weeks of demonstrations against his decision to take a third term in office. He refused to answer questions about the matter and claimed that the Somali-based Al-Shabaab group posed a threat to his country. Now, from Good Governance Africa, researcher Stephen Johnson. Stephen Johnson, are you here? Please come join us. Here you go. To analyse and give us his views on the situation in Burundi. Good morning. Wrong seat there. Nice to have you with us. Nice to have you back here with us again. The events around the failed coup sort of overshadowed the Tanzania summit. What do you think the leaders at the summit achieved with this as a sort of backstory there?
Well, this was an extraordinary summit called by the EAC on the situation in Burundi, namely the protests leading up to the coup. So while the leaders weren't expecting there to be a coup, I think it was very important that they were all in one place together and they're able to present a unified response. All the African leaders who attended the meeting very much condemned the coup and the coup leaders, and this may have had something to do with the coup leaders deciding not to push it further and to declare it a failed event and step down and hand themselves over into custody.
How is Burundi viewed now, and how is this coup attempt viewed within the wider scenario that we're seeing ahead of the Pan-African Parliament, for instance?
The coup attempt, it is worrying because one of Africa's biggest challenges is the passing over of power from one government to another or one leader to another. And we can see this happen successfully, as we've just watched happen in Nigeria earlier this year. But in this case, the coup leaders may have had a point that President Nkurunziza is trying to stand for a third term, which is unconstitutional according to the Burundian constitution, as well as the Arusha Accords that stopped the Burundian civil war. So while they may have had good intentions, the fact is they are following in his footsteps. They are not asking the people who they want to lead them. They are saying, we will put ourselves in power. So I think it is very good that African leaders have condemned this, but the root causes of the coup and the protests have not been addressed.
What do you think the next couple of weeks and months holds for Pierre Nkurunziza in light of what has gone on the last week?
The next couple of months, well, the next couple of weeks are going to be very challenging for him. I think the biggest thing he has to do is deal with the situation very delicately. At the moment, there are a lot of people in Burundi on both the government supporting side and the opposition who are very angry about what has happened firstly in terms of the president trying to stand for a third term, and then the pro-government supporters obviously are not very happy with the fact that there has been this coup attempt. I think what he should do is tread very carefully. He should not show clemency, but follow the rule of law. So far, the coup leaders have been charged in a civilian court, and they're charged at destabilizing public institutions, which carries a maximum penalty of 15 years. So if they face a free and fair trial, it could pave the way for a peaceful solution.
He's back in Bujumbura now, and a lot of the civic organizations that we saw, they're not very happy. They're going to continue with protests in that country for weeks and months to come. Stability, the prospects of stability in the Great Lakes region, how does this sort of play out within that?
Well, we're looking at a region that is already has some serious issues, namely the what's going on in the Kivu provinces of eastern DRC. So we have the refugees coming from there into Burundi, into Rwanda. Now, that region can't face another refugee crisis. What we need is the African leaders of the East African community, the leaders of the AU, and for international leaders to come together and firstly condemn the coup and condemn the president's attempt to stand for a third term, because that is what the root of the destabilization is.
What about the fate of the coup leaders? Yeah, it seems they have a lot of support within Burundi and then also within the wider African community. What do you think it will be in store for them, and how should Nkurunziza deal with them?
Well, I think as I said, he should follow proper legal practices. They need to be brought to trial. But it is worrying that the coup leaders, their lawyers have said that some of them have been abused in police custody. And it is very important that the president shows that Burundi, that what happened here is not acceptable, but it must be done within the rule of law. These coup leaders can't just be disappeared or whatever. The Burundi and the continent needs to see what happens when people try to illegally seize power.
Well, I thank you very much for joining us, Stephen. You nearly missed us. You nearly sat in the wrong seat there, but thank you very much for joining us this morning. That's Stephen Johnson, who is from Good Governance Africa. He's a researcher giving us his view on stability in Burundi. Let's take a quick look at what you've been saying on this issue on social media. at the SABC Newsroom, of course, is where you can send us your views. It's a pity and sad to see one of the poorest countries in the world fighting and burning the little it had. Hashtag Burundi, where is your future, asks Alida K. Minovich says Burundi protests about to be forbidden on a new pretense. Shabab might target protesters. Yes, that is one issue that's starting to emerge there. Edwin says, so Burundi is now fine. No street protests anymore, opposing radio's bomb. How smart. Yeah, a lot of unanswered questions. Thierry says, won't even observe the 24-hour truce. A woman protests on Solo downtown, Bujumbura, shouting, halt the third term. That one from Thierry. Let's take a look at our tweet of the day now. It comes from our very own Dr. Lamini Zuma, and she says, it's critical to refrain from any acts likely to deepen existing divisions and maintain the interests of Burundi and its people above all. Now let's take a look at what's happening on our Newsroom Facebook page today. The National Union of Mine Workers in the Western Cape are seeking the intervention of the provincial government as the strike by Good Hope construction workers entered its fourth week. Then President Jacob Zuma and Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta have vowed to increase contact between the two countries. Kenyatta is in the country to address the opening of the 6th session of the Pan-African Parliament here in Gauteng. And 9 people were killed and 18 injured yesterday when a fight broke out, a gunfight that is, between rival biker gangs at a sports bar in Texas, leading to a gun battle in the parking lot there. Time for us to take a short commercial break. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News.
Hey, top players. So, what do you call someone who does their bit to ensure the future's gonna be cool? Voter. Get it? No, dudes. Not voter, kabouter. I'm talking voter. You know, like make an X. Ish, tough crowd.
Vincent Bones, the man with silky vocals that had many viewers captivated from his very first audition, now holds the title of King of South African Idols Season 10.
I came from the streets, so I was a bit rough. So when I got to Boys Town, I started teaching myself playing piano with 2 fingers. Well, that's how I started with music. So I started getting interested in piano, and then I started singing.
He's a loving father, loving husband, and he makes us happy.
Bophelong, your show about those who took on and conquered life's challenges, every Saturday at 17:30 CAT.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Let's just have a look at the stories making headlines today. Former Grand Slam tennis champion Bob Hewitt's attorney has indicated that he will be asking for a postponement of his client's sentencing. Hewitt has been found guilty on 2 counts of rape and sexual assault. The 75-year-old is expected to appear in the North Gauteng High Court today to be sentenced for the crimes committed more than 30 years ago. The Alexandra Magistrates Court is expected to make a ruling on the bail application of 2 of the men implicated in the death of Emmanuel Sithole. The Mozambican national's death occurred during a wave of xenophobic attacks in April. He died as a result of a single stab wound during an attempted robbery. And Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta is set to address the opening of the 6th session of the Pan-African Parliament in Midrand today. After meeting in Pretoria last night with President Jacob Zuma and Zuma and Kenyatta agreed to increase contact between their countries. Former President Thabo Mbeki will also present at the session to deliver his report on illicit flows from Africa. Well, remember, you can find all of those stories on our Newsroom Facebook page. Just search for Newsroom. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Gibbon, back to you.
Thank you very much, Alina. 2 weeks back, it was World Immunization Week, which also sought to promote the use of vaccines to protect people of all ages against disease. According to the World Health Organization, immunization prevents between 2 and 3 million deaths every year and protects children from diseases like diphtheria. Diphtheria is said to have been one of the most feared childhood diseases throughout history, characterized by shocking outbreaks. Now, to speak about diphtheria today, we've had some cases in KwaZulu-Natal. We're joined in our Durban studio by the KZN Health MEC, Dr. Sibongeniseni Dlomo. A very good morning to you, Doctor. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, sir, and good morning to all SABC viewers.
Doctor, can you just tell us what diphtheria is, and then also tell us about the little outbreak we've had in KwaZulu-Natal and how you've dealt with that?
Yes, diphtheria is an infection by a bacteria called the Corynebacteria diphtheria. Now, it is a serious disease. That is why we have opted as a world to actually immunize so that people as they are getting born do not get exposed to this very serious illness. Now, the last cases that were picked up in South Africa and probably in KwaZulu-Natal was 1989, so it's quite a long time ago. And yes, we do call it an outbreak because we have begun to see some cases of diphtheria at eThekwini and Ugu districts. Now, there are 9 of such cases that have resulted into 3 fatalities. And we actually have been pledging for support from the countries that are producing an antitoxin, because this bacteria, this infection, you have to treat it with 2 approaches. One is to give an antibiotic, penicillin, which will deal with the load, with the bacterial load. But by the time you deal with that, the bacteria itself has produced toxins, which are the ones that are actually causing the damage. And locally, it's a droplet infection, spreads by just sneezing, coughing, and therefore we actually find it that it affects mainly the respiratory tract, and it comes in and you get a local inflammation, and also the toxin causes the blockages of the respiratory tract, and it causes what we call a bull neck, pressing of these muscles around the neck, and therefore usually you get the affection of you get affected on the respiratory tract, and sometimes it can even go seriously to affect the muscles of the heart, the kidneys, and also the brain tissue. So what we have done in KwaZulu-Natal was, one, to make a call to all parents to say, come forward, whether you are aware, whether your child was immunized or not immunized, bring the Road to Health charge, and we will look into that and support. So we are doing catch-up programs on immunization, and we want to do that to all children up to age of 12 years. What we have done for those who are already in our hospitals and needing support was to actually ask for these countries that are producing the antitoxin. We have received a very limited stock from India, and it's going to help us to just look after very few patients. Japan has indicated that they only produce enough antitoxins for their country, but they will look into our request, and they will probably be sending us about 500 of those vials of antitoxin. Indonesia, another third country, has sent us a small amount, and they hope to send us more. But that is not a good answer. The answer is we must prevent diphtheria from taking place rather than to start treating. So we would therefore call upon all our parents, because at 6 weeks after birth, all children, if they go to any of our facility, clinic or hospital, will be given BCG together with the diphtheria vaccination and all other necessary ones. And then at 14 months again, 18 months, they get boosters. A fourth booster is 6 years and 12 years. We therefore are assured by scientists that if we have got all those immunizations and boosters, you therefore are protected. You do have a good immunity against diphtheria.
Doctor, what are the early symptoms that parents and teachers and the like should be on the lookout for with regards to this disease?
We are guided by the clinicians. It's a flu-like illness. You just get sneezing, coughing, the swelling of the neck, and the challenges with the respiratory tract. So it's not very different from any other flu-like illness that you get. But I think what could be the best thing is to actually say, could parents, teachers request that all learners, at least up to age 12, should actually be able to familiarize themselves and bring the road to health charge. Because it's not, while we call it an outbreak, yes, it is happening here and there. It's an outbreak because we haven't had this disease for long. But it's not really like out there in many communities. However, it can spread quickly because, like I indicated, it's a droplet. Is one child sneezing, coughing in a class, it can actually go to other children if they are not actually immunized. So it's not really easy to detect. It's a flu-like illness like any flu, and right now it's winter time in South Africa, so it may just be an innocent flu, and yet maybe for another child is a start of diphtheria.
Doctor, thank you for joining us today. That is the KZN Health MEC, Dr. Sibongiseni Dlomu, talking about diphtheria and what you should be thinking about and doing at home. Now, Israeli police clashed with dozens of rock-throwing Palestinians yesterday as more than 30,000 Israelis marched through Old Jerusalem's Muslim Quarter. Jewish nationalists commemorated Israel's 1967 capture of East Jerusalem, marking the 48th Jerusalem Day. Police said that 2 officers protecting the thousands of Jewish marchers were injured and 4 Palestinians were arrested. You are watching Newsroom. We'll be back with you after a short little break.
Catch all these and more every day on Sports Live at 8:30 p.m. on the SABC News Channel.
Welcome back. This is Newsroom. The worldwide community of museums celebrates International Museum Day today with the theme of Museums for a Sustainable Society. The aim is to highlight the role of museums in raising public awareness about the need for a society that is less wasteful, more cooperative, and that uses resources in a way that respects living systems. Local museums provide the perfect opportunity for South Africans to explore, learn, and understand the past in an interactive and engaging environment. One such museum is the District 6 Museum in Cape Town, a memorial to thousands of people who were forcibly removed from that area under apartheid. It offers the community an opportunity to learn from the past, truly understand our heritage, and appreciate how far we've come since 1994. Now, the director of the District 6 Museum, Bonita Bennett, joins us from Cape Town. A very good morning to you, Bonita. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Ewan, and thank you very much for the invitation.
Benita, quickly tell us about International Museum Day and what it's all about, really, for you.
Well, the International Museum Day was called by ICOM in 1977, and it is an opportunity for museum professionals and for members of the public to really reflect on the role of museums. And so as professionals who work in museums, it's something that we try and think about every day, but I think this gives us a great opportunity to kind of refocus it and make sure that we are speaking in a way to the public that is understandable.
Do we in South Africa, do we understand enough of each other's history? Are we even interested in one another's history? And how does this tap into what you do?
I'd love to believe that we are interested, and I think there is a desire to understand, but I don't think we do really understand enough about our own history and exactly what that is, what that entails, you know, because we have quite a diverse range of stories that form part of our history. And what we are trying to do in museums, I suppose worldwide, nationally, and particularly in Cape Town, is really to get people to love museums the way that we do. Because museums do tell a story about the past, but they also, very importantly, because we live in a present, we need to also speak to present realities. And that's really, I think, part of the learning and understanding can flow from that.
The District 6 story is probably one of the most interesting ones in South Africa, part of our history under apartheid. 50 years later, almost 50 years later, tell us about the relevance and significance today.
Well, District 6 was one of the communities, like many others across the country, where people were forcibly removed as part of a kind of racial cleansing of the area. And as you might know, and as people might know, District 6 was very well known for being diverse in all its forms. And I think apartheid has made us think of diversity as just a racial category. But District 6 certainly demonstrated to people that prior to the formal declaration of it as a white group area, it was diverse across a number of on a number of levels: religion, culture, economics, sexual orientation, and all kinds of other ways that people are different. And so that is why it is quite an important story when we look back to what it is about District 6 that we want to rebuild, that we want to recover, that forms part of restitution. It is both about rebuilding the houses, but also about rebuilding that essence of a very, very diverse and rich community.
How do we not repeat the mistakes of the past? How do we tell the story of unity in South Africa? How do we not vandalize each other's history?
That's a very hard one, I mean, the easy answer is about learning. I think when we always say we need to learn about the past, because if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. But I think we need to go a step beyond that, because I don't think it's only about information. Because people who commit atrocities are often very knowledgeable people. They know a lot about history. They're very clever people. It's not that they lack knowledge. I think it's about lacking a sense of humanity, a sense of solidarity, and that's something that I think that we need to work very hard on. And so, yes, learning about the past, but also learning from the past and really being open to change. And I hope that when people come into a museum like the District 6 Museum and others, I think, is that you don't only come to learn the facts and figures of history, but you also come and try to understand the impact, and that you would leave there with thinking, how has this experience really changed the way that I interact both in my immediate family, in my immediate community, and also in thinking about a nation as well.
Benita, thank you for joining us today. That's the director of the District 6 Museum in Cape Town. We're talking about International Museum Day, and it's an opportunity for all of us to get to know the history of our country and the groups within the country, all of our history a little bit better, because we all make up South Africa, we all make up Africa. Let's try and get to know each other and communicate a little bit better with each other. Now, today we're going to close with the glitz and the glamour of the PSL Awards last night, with Tefo Mashamaite scooping 3 awards: Footballer of the Season, Players Player of the Year, and then Defender of the Season award. He also pocketed 450,000 South African rand in prize money. He's recognized for his role in helping the Glamour Boys to a league and MTN8 double in a record-breaking 2014-15 season. Now, today, Tefo is with us here in studio. Good morning.
Good morning, Eben.
It's always nice to wake up with all the silverware on your table, isn't it?
Yeah, beautiful, but I didn't get any time to sleep, you know. After the awards last night, we had to do media, you know, the shoots, and I think I only had like 2 hours of sleep. I had to be up today for the interviews.
Well, I thank you for coming and being such a professional, being in today. I know you don't look tired, to be honest. I suppose the celebrations carry you along a little bit, doesn't it?
No, for sure. I make sure that I refresh a bit, you know, hydrate, get some water. 2 hours is enough for me, and I'm up and running right now.
Defenders never really win Player of the Year. They never really win those kind of awards, Footballer of the Season. Does this make it extra special for you being recognised in that way?
No, for sure. You know, 2015 is a year of the sheep in the Chinese mythology, and I think in the PSL mythology, this should be the year of the defender. I mean, you look at the way that Chiefs defended this year. So many clean sheets. We really worked hard as a structured defense, and I think it was one of the contributing factors towards us clinching the title.
Now, of course, everyone this morning is going to talk to you about the money. I know you've. Have anybody been asking you for loans yet? Now that you've got a little bit of cash on the side?
No, not yet. I'm still waiting for those calls, and I'm just going to make sure that I switch off my phone.
Fantastic. Tell us about your journey, though. You know, there we see Footballer of the Season. Tell us the long road that it took to get to this point. I don't think people can understand that how tough it is.
It's just down to having a dream and, you know, forgetting where you come from. You know, it wasn't about my past. I come from, a rural area in Bochum, 90 kilometers north of Limpopo, north of Polokwane, I'm sorry. You know, it was tough because when you come from the rural areas, you don't really have the confidence, you know, to go out there and really, you know, to step out. Stamp your dreams. But like, you know, for me, I've always believed that if I get an opportunity, I'm going to live out my dream. And today I'm here. You know, I've worked hard. There were challenges along the way, but it's been an interesting journey. You know, I never really looked at the lessons as failures. You know, it was always lessons and feedbacks. Now,
the season's been a fantastic one for your club. Not only did you guys play fantastic football, you deserve champions. There was this train that wasn't going to stop at any stations throughout the season. It's been a really terrific season for Kaizer Chiefs. Tell us about the outstanding moments for yourself personally, and then, of course, the wider club, the group, and so forth.
No, for sure, it's been a great season. Leading the lock from day one until the last day, going 19 games without being beaten, winning the MTN8. Having the best defensive record, I think it's one of the ingredients that goes into, you know, this accomplishments that we're celebrating today. And for me, I was just grateful to be a leader, you know, in this great season, and I learned a lot. Took some lessons out of a beautiful seasons that we had. We had a group of players that were hungry, a coach who was ready to mentor us and to really ground us whenever we became complacent. I think that was one of the factors that really contributed to this.
Now, after success, the year thereafter is always a very difficult one. What's your view on the next season, and what are the hopes and the goals of the team going forward?
Oh, well, they say after, you know, reaching success, you always have to remind yourself that, you know, you still need to go back, draw water, you still need to go back and chop wood. So we still have to eat at the end of the day. You know, you can't really live on this success. It took hard work to get here, and it's going to take hard work to maintain that and to keep going.
We've seen pictures of the function last night. Just tell us that right there when you got the trophy at the awards, what sort of goes through your mind? Who are you thankful for?
My mother, firstly, for the kind of inspiration that she gave me. She never really wanted to stand in the way of my dreams, because the society that we live in, you know, there's a whole lot of challenges. Sometimes, you know, parents want to live out their dreams through their children.
Yeah.
And chances are they're going to tell you that you have to go to school. And, you know, my mother's always encouraged me to follow my dreams. And I told her that I want to play football. She told me that school is important, but at the end of the day, if I can finish school and pursue a dream of football, I'll make her happy. And obviously, I've got two beautiful kids, Petolole Amali, and they inspire me. They drive me to wake up every day in the morning because I have to put food on the table.
Well, Tefo, you're a wonderful example to all South Africans. Congratulations on all the awards, on a wonderful season, and none more deserving than yourself. Thank you for joining us this morning. I know you're tired and you've had a long night, but let's have a quick look at what the people are saying, what they're tweeting with regards to what you've done. Spoo says, well-deserved Masha Maite PSL Awards. S15 talking about the awards win. Masha Maite, defender, players, player, and player of the season. Kozivo Live, says Pule. Tobega says, last year it was Vilakazi, and this year it's Masha Maite. Congrats. You deserve it. Hashtag the king. Calling you the king now. You like that?
I can live with that.
I like that. Chronic says, I fail to understand why Tawa Matu couldn't even get one award. Well, you know, there are always winners and losers, and there's the picture that really matters.
Yeah, for me, you know, this medal is more important than, you know, these trophies combined, because long after this is gone, I think this will stand out, you know, playing for a great team,
yes.
You know, adding to the history. We know Chiefs are a giant in South African football, and having to contribute this, I think, will go a long way.
Thank you very much. Tefo Masha Maite, player of the season here in South Africa. Well, he's won all the awards, really. They're all here this morning. We're going to close now today, well, on a somber note, if not sad. We remember the death of our colleague, well-known radio and TV personality, Vuyo Mbuli, who passed away 2 years ago today. Mbuli's sudden death shocked and saddened the entire nation. He was well known for his charismatic nature and his tagline, Shap Shap, Itada. Goeie genade. Vuyo, we really miss you, my brother. That's where we leave it. Newsroom, of course, broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. We also stream live on YouTube at that time, with the whole show available on demand on our YouTube channel. This is SABC News. You have been watching Newsroom. We love it in the morning.
Premier Soccer League Awards continues.